who's a psychologist, wrote a book partly about him, detailing the ways in which he's a very, very, pardon my frankness, sick personality. So for him to react in such a way that goes beyond immaturity to absolute selfishness, willing to undermine our institutions by telling blatant lies about supposed and completely unproven voter fraud, no, that's Donald Trump. That was to be expected. That was predicted by many folks even before he gave a disastrous statement on around election day, after Election Day.
All right, stay with me. Stephen Golub also getting in a reaction from Ray Locker. The point that we were discussing earlier, Ray, Kamala Harris set to become the first woman vice president, set to become the first Indian origin vice president. Your reaction to the challenges that lie ahead and how this is a historic development that brings with it a lot of hope for Americans who have voted for the Biden-Harris combination?
Well, you know, anytime you have somebody from previously marginalized communities taking an office that's very visible, has a lot of authority, it provides a great example for people of Indian and African American descent. They see that somebody who's part of their group can rise to the highest level of, U.S. government, and it makes them, feel encouraged about the process. Because for so long, people from different backgrounds have looked at, people of prominence in government, politics, business, and seen only a sea of white faces. So that's very encouraging. As well as in relationship, you can look at somebody and go, "He's one of our own." I think it strengthens the Indian American diaspora community here. I think there will probably be some longer-term political advantages because of that, but it also presents some challenges. As we mentioned earlier, people who are concerned about the increasing diversity of America will now see somebody from a group that they don't really like or understand, and it will exacerbate their feelings of, insecurity, just as President Obama did. So, this country is on a long arc toward changing. And her election is obviously part of that, but it has some possible pitfalls with it as well.
Ray Locker, if I can get you in on this aspect, your reaction to the expectations from the Biden-Harris combination and how this does mark a historic day for the United States of America, with Kamala Harris becoming the first woman vice president, the first Indian origin vice president.
It's a huge deal. Symbolically, Joe Biden's 77 years old. He'll be 78 when he's sworn in. For anybody, that's pretty old, particularly in a job with so much stress involved in it. So she's going to play a greater role. I think they're optimistic about what they can do for the country, but bear in mind, Democrats lost some seats in the House. They probably will not recapture to the Senate. We won't know until January. So legislatively, they have a lot of challenges. It's up to them, to see how they can find common ground with Republicans, who in the previous two Democratic administrations have not been really willing to cooperate with Democratic presidents. We saw it with Bill Clinton. We saw it with Barack Obama. So they have a lot of work to do.
Stephen Golub, your reaction to this historic day where we are seeing Kamala Harris set to become the first woman vice president and the first Indian origin vice president?
I agree completely with everything your other guest just said. I guess I'd add it is significant, certainly as a model for all sorts of young women, for women of Asian, specifically Indian descent, for women of Black descent, since that's part of her ancestry also. It's really significant just to see someone in in such a high position of authority, potentially the next president in various ways. That's a tremendous impact. More generally, what I just add briefly regarding the implications for India is that this, on balance, is very good. I know that President Trump Mr. Trump and Mr. Modi were friendly, but it wasn't in India's interest to have someone backed by white supremacist forces and who had endorsed and encouraged them to be the president. That was very bad for all communities of color, including Indians. It wasn't good in terms of visa implications. It wasn't good in terms of foreign policy to have a president who, if China came along offering a trade deal or offering potentially great investments for his companies in hotels or businesses in China, he easily could have turned his back on India. So this is very good for India, even more, it's certainly including with Kamala Harris being vice president, but even in ways that go beyond that. And one more point I'd emphasize is this is good for India and the world in that the United States has stepped back from the abyss of falling into authoritarianism, which is what the re-election of Donald Trump would have meant. Our democracy was saved by this election with ramifications certainly for us, but also positive ramifications for the rest of the world.
All right, stay with me. Ray Locker and Stephen Golub also joining us on the broadcast this minute is Professor Brahma Chalani, Professor for Strategic Studies at the Center for Policy Research. Thanks very much, Professor, for speaking with us here on WION World is One. Your initial reaction to the latest coming in, the Associated Press has declared Joe Biden to be the winner of this presidential race, and what this really means for the India-US partnership.
Well, as Biden takes office, India is on the cusp of joining the US-led security architecture. Recently, India signed the last of the 4 foundational agreements that the US maintains with all its close defense partners. And the main driver of India's new willingness to build closer defense collaboration with the US has been China's expansionism. But Biden is expected to reset US policy on China. He will seek to lower tensions with China. He will seek to establish better cooperation with Beijing. And if he resets ties with China, there might be concern in New Delhi about Washington's reliability. And if he changes the Trump policy approach toward Pakistan, Trump cut off most security aid to Pakistan. And if the Biden administration were to relieve pressure on Pakistan, that again would make New Delhi have second thoughts about jumping on the bandwagon of the US. And there is yet another issue that we have to bear in mind. And that issue has the potential of souring relations with India. When Trump, in the 4 years that Trump was in office, he refrained from commenting on India's internal matters. Even when he was asked to comment on the controversial Citizenship Act, he said that was an internal matter of India. He realized that any statement that he made on a domestic Indian issue would give a handle to Prime Minister Modi's vocal critics at home. But Biden, through his official campaign page, has already slammed Modi's government on issues like Kashmir and this citizenship law, calling these matters inconsistent with India's secularism. Now, as you know, India has traditionally resented such interference in its internal affairs. This resentment predates Modi's arrival on the political scene. And if you have a Biden administration that seeks to build closer cooperation with China, seeks to relieve pressure on Pakistan, and criticizes India on Kashmir and minority rights, now that could really make New Delhi have second thoughts about entering the US-led security architecture. So there's a historic opportunity at the moment to get India on board to build this US-India security alliance. And if Biden were to flunk that opportunity, then it will be a huge loss for US foreign policy.
A historic opportunity indeed, Professor Chalani, as you're saying, and a historic day for the United States of America. On our screen is the latest tweet coming in just moments ago from President-elect Joe Biden. America, I'm honored that you have chosen me to lead our great country. The work ahead of us will be hard, but I promise you this, I will be a president for all Americans, whether you voted for me or not. I will keep the faith that you have placed in me. Ray Locker, the common thread running through the reactions, the statements coming in from Joe Biden, even this latest tweet after the final result, has been that of reassurance, has been that of faith in the American democratic process, and that seems to be one of the primary factors that would have worked in his favor.
Yes, I mean, that's traditionally what U.S. presidents do. I mean, they go to places where there have been problems, regardless of whether they voted for the president or not. They try to reassure people. Presidents Obama, Bush, Clinton, the first Bush, Reagan have all done that. That's something that President Trump has done relatively little of. And while I do think his mishandling of the coronavirus affected his political standing, I also believe that there was just a general sense of exhaustion from many voters who were like ready to move on to somebody who's a little more comforting, a little more traditional. You can only have, so much in your face attitude, for anyone. And really on the part of a lot of Republicans, elected officials, they were tired of it too. They would privately tell reporters, look, this guy doesn't really know what he's talking about. We're exhausted by this. And then when the TV lights went on, say something to the opposite, but we already knew how they felt. So that's why you're not seeing a lot of Republican elected officials right now standing up for President Trump and his claims of voter fraud. I think they're ready to turn the page, do what they traditionally have done when there's a Democratic president in the office, fight for what they want to do. Some would call it obstruction. But I think they've been tired of carrying water for this president for 4 years.
But Stephen Golub, at the same time, given what we witnessed over the last 4 years, more so during the campaigning and the larger message put forth by the Trump campaign, are you surprised that Donald Trump managed to make this contest as close as it got? It was coming down to a few decimal points in some of the battleground states.
Yeah, not only am I surprised, a lot of people are surprised, and a hell of a lot of pollsters are surprised because most of the polls predicted a much more comfortable Biden victory, as well as Democrats doing better in our House of Representatives and Senate races. There are all sorts of theories floating about. I think for right now, it's really just speculation on why Trump and the Republicans did as well as they did. In the weeks and months to come, there'll be some serious analysts, research and the like that will make the answers clearer. But for now, there's a lot of surprise in the air, even as there is relief in the air that Joe Biden won. The implications of this, though, the implications of Trump doing as well as he did are that the leading implication is that Trump may leave office, Trump will leave office, but Trumpism is not dead. He'll continue as a force afterwards. The ideas that drove him, that made him popular, some of them very, very negative, and as I've said, racist ideas, not among all of his supporters, but among some of them, will continue to be part of our dialogue. We had some really, a few really strange people running as Republicans, believing crazy conspiracy theories, who got elected to the House this time around. So a lot of issues, a lot of problems will continue, unfortunately, as reflected by the fact that Trump did as well as he did.
Right. Professor Chelani, if I can get you in on the aspect that you were talking about earlier, the ambitious resetting of not just the ties with China, but with countries across the world. What would Joe Biden's foreign policy look like, according to you?
Few know what Joe Biden's foreign policy would look like because he ran in the race, not on his own agenda. His main plank was that he is not Donald Trump. So it was about his character, the fact that he's not Trump, that the US needed change. So he didn't really present an alternative agenda to Trump's policies. So one doesn't really know what his foreign policy will look like. And also, we should not forget that he will come to office with a fractured mandate. In fact, the US has emerged even more divided and polarized from the presidential and congressional elections. It's one America and two nations. Even the electoral map, the outcome, in the different states shows how divided the United States is. And on top of that, the Biden administration will face Republican hostility, an unfriendly Senate, an unfriendly Supreme Court, and a Trump seeking to convince the 70 million Americans who voted for him that Democrats stole the election. All these factors are going to weigh on the Biden administration's ability to unite and govern. So given the difficulties that the Biden administration will face, and given Biden's own old age, he will turn 78 this month, I think these factors are going to be quite a burden on the Biden administration. And we'll have to wait and see as to what kind of foreign policy Biden will shape for his administration.
Stephen Golub, do you want to weigh in on this aspect?
Well, I think the professor's made some good points. A few matters I might differ with, though, is that Biden has had some detailed plans, including foreign policy. They didn't get much attention in the general election campaign because that's not what American voters pay attention to. It often boils down to who you'd rather have a beer with. And that's one way of looking at this election. More Americans want to have a beer with Joe Biden than Donald Trump. Not the only way, and that's oversimplifying, but that's part of it. But Biden did have some detailed plans, including foreign policy. More specifically, I do think we'll see Biden taking China, its economic, political, and military threats very seriously. He's not a lightweight. He's experienced. His leading area of experience is really in foreign policy, and the people around him are serious foreign policy veterans who know what China can be, who know the negative aspects of China's conduct around the world, including for India, and he'll continue to value India as an ally and a friend. Above and beyond that, I get that back to a previous point I made, in that it's in the interest of India and all of us to have a president who understands issues which Donald Trump didn't. He refused to read even short briefing papers because he's apparently incapable of that. It's the attention issue. And beyond that, he really is an unstable character, and you don't want that as the president of the United States, and an unstable character who turned his back on even the best of friends if it serves his own political, personal, or financial interests. That was not in the interest of India and the world. In Joe Biden, we do have a stable, knowledgeable, experienced person who values India and takes China very, very seriously. So I wanted to emphasize those points.
Professor Charani, we're also talking about how this is a historic moment for the United States when we look at Kamala Harris taking over as the next vice president. We have spoken about how this will be a new chapter for the India-US partnership. What, according to you, would be the stumbling blocks right away, given the baggage from the Trump presidency?
Well, when Biden was vice president, Obama declared that the US-India relationship is one of the defining partnerships of the 21st century. Biden may prioritize deepening America's engagement with India. In fact, given Kamala Harris's Indian heritage, it would be ironical if relations with India did not flourish under Biden. Biden could accomplish what Trump failed to clinch: a trade deal with India. As you know, a trade deal between India and the United States has been under negotiation for the past year or so. And that deal never materialized. And the booming bilateral trade between the US and India now totals more than $150 billion a year. The US needs India to break China's stranglehold on key global supply chains, especially in the medical sector. India is the world's leading supplier of generic drugs. Another reason why India will be important for the new administration in Washington is that US policies over the last decade or so have counterproductively fostered an expanding alliance between Russia and China. That makes America's new bond with India most significant for US policymakers. India is assuming greater meaning for Washington because of this growing partnership between China and Russia. So unless the historic opportunity to forge a US-India security alliance slips away, I expect the US and India to establish an unbeatable partnership that helps to underpin a stable balance of power in Asia and the wider Indo-Pacific region.
Stephen Golub, Professor Chelani also talking about the need for America to reset ties with China amid the pandemic, which the United States has definitely been the worst affected because of. What do you think would the next 1 year perhaps look like under Joe Biden as far as the US-China relationship is concerned?
Well, that's a good question. Part of it depends on what China does and how China reacts. Will it continue to be so aggressive in the Indian Ocean, in the South China Sea, in terms of the border, what its aggressive actions towards India along your northeast border, all sorts of issues like that. I think he'll try to put, and trade matters as well. I think he'll try to put things on a more even keel with China. The approach he'll take will be steadier than Trump's, which again was mainly Trump's trade fight with China wasn't really about very substantive matters. It was more about what he could do to appear to be strong to the American public in ways that would help garner him votes. And I think Biden will take a view to trade and to all these other strategic issues that will have a longer term and less personal aspect to it, and that will be on balance good. But will we come out of this a year from now with a greater degree of hostility between the US and China, or somewhat smoother and friendlier relations? I think Biden's team will handle it well, but a lot of that depends on the actions that China takes, and those are kind of hard to predict right now.
Right, and speaking a little bit more about Donald Trump's handling of the COVID-19 crisis, Stephen Golub, first calling it a hoax to begin with, and then not even listening to the scientists and talking about firing the top American infectious disease expert, Dr. Fauci, just days before the election. On the other hand, we have Joe Biden talking about how his #1 priority will be dealing with the COVID-19 crisis. To what extent do you think Trump's handling of the crisis has helped Joe Biden achieve what he has? And the scenario seems to have completely changed.
Pointed out, it wasn't just a matter of the COVID crisis. It's partly a matter of the contrasting styles. Some people were just burned out on Donald Trump. Every day it was something new, and it was often something nasty or negative or new scandal or something he was tweeting about. And one of the ways in which one of the impacts of this election is that I think many of us will just relax a little bit more. In some ways, the Biden administration will be more boring, even though it'll be dealing with some challenges and some big, big challenges, and that'll be a relief. So, when in terms of the past few weeks, the COVID crisis has gotten even worse here. Whether that contributed to Biden winning or not, I don't know. I think the longstanding incompetence and indifference of the Trump administration in handling COVID were more a factor than the past few weeks. And one impact I might add, as long as we're talking about COVID, is that I don't think it's an overstatement to say that hundreds of thousands of people who otherwise would have died in the United States if Donald Trump had been reelected will live because Joe Biden has been elected, because the Trump administration's policies and indifference would have continued long after January 20th, even with the vaccine on the horizon for next year. What Biden will do in terms of the model he'll set, the coordination he'll undertake, the policies he'll put in place will save many, many lives here.
Right. Stay with me, gentlemen. Just a quick look now at the latest numbers that are coming in. And there we have the final picture of what America's electoral map looks like. Joe Biden winning the White House as per the Associated Press. He has sailed way beyond the 270 magic number required to take over the White House. His tally at the moment, as per the Associated Press figures, standing at 284. Remember, over the last few minutes, he has grabbed Pennsylvania as per the Associated Press results, which has given him that comfortable 20 seats, taking him way beyond the 270 number. 284 is where Joe Biden's tally stands at the moment. Donald Trump with 214. Let me get in Stephen Golub quickly on this aspect of how this has been a neck-and-neck race, of course, and looking at the way the battleground states have been making this election too close to call, Stephen Golub. Pennsylvania going in the favor of Joe Biden. He's also managed to flip other crucial states in this contest, which have given him this victory that we are looking at. Your assessment of that?
Well, yes, he also flipped two states that put Trump over the top in 2016, Michigan and Wisconsin, very crucially. I might add that when all of the electoral votes are totaled up, there's an excellent chance that Biden will win Nevada and Arizona, and a very good chance they'll come out on top in Georgia. So his totals will be even more than that. One other thing I would add, I don't consider this likely, but there is a route by which Donald Trump could challenge these results and take it to the Supreme Court with the help of Republican legislatures in certain key states. But it's very unlikely at this point, given the whole momentum, given the fact that most people are accepting that Biden won, that Trump would succeed at that. It's a very, very outside possibility, especially given that Biden's margin will include more than one state. It won't just hinge on one state. So that's a factor to just keep in the back of our minds, although it's very unlikely that it will come to pass in that regard. And that's where things stand right now, looking very, very good for Biden, and his margin of victory will likely increase. One thing I might add is that what this does portray about the U.S. or makes clear about our electoral college system is that it could have been even worse. It could have this could have ended up in some very bad, even more contentious directions if more states had been up in the air and if they weren't tilting towards Biden. So next time an American may say to Indians, well, our Constitution is so wonderful. There are wonderful aspects of our Constitution. But when it comes to picking a president, it can get very, very ugly. And we dodged a bullet in terms of it looks like we've dodged a bullet, despite Donald Trump's protests this time around, in terms of avoiding how ugly it could have gotten.
All right, stay with me. Professor Chelani and Stephen Golub coming to you in just a short bit. We have another another development coming in from Twitter, where Joe Biden has now changed his profile description on the microblogging site. Joe Biden is now calling himself the president-elect on Twitter. That's a development taking place just moments ago. Joe Biden set to become the next president of the United States of America. To those of you who are just joining us, this is the clear picture, the mandate that the Americans have handed out. As per the Associated Press, Joe Biden grabbing 284 electoral college votes. What's changed in the last 1 hour when you've perhaps been away from your TV screens is that Pennsylvania has gone to Joe Biden. Pennsylvania has a huge chunk of 20 electoral college votes, which then took him way beyond the 270 magic number and gave him 284 electoral college votes. And there we have Kamala Harris's Twitter page as well. Kamala Harris set to become the next Vice President of the United States, the first woman Vice President and the first Indian origin Vice President of the United States. There we have the Twitter page of Kamala Harris, where she has described herself now just moments ago as Vice President-elect of the United States of America. Let's get in a quick reaction now also from our team of correspondents on the ground. First to Mandy Clark, our London bureau chief, who's been getting us a sense of the mood on the ground. Mandy, I believe you have reactions coming in from London of the way the celebrations have panned out over the last few minutes to Joe Biden being declared the winner and the next president of the United States of America by the Associated Press. Give us a sense of what's happening around you.
Well, there is fireworks going off, of course. A few nights ago were fireworks night, bonfire night, but there's a sense of elation and celebration. There was very much in the public seemed to there's those fireworks back Joe Biden in many senses. Of course, the government itself was slightly more aligned to Donald Trump, with Boris Johnson making a lot of overtures to Donald Trump, of course, in light of Brexit and that trade deal that Donald Trump would promise to. That would be a beautiful trade deal. Now, of course, all things have changed with Biden. So it might be slightly a rejig for the parliament to start those warm relationships with Biden, but certainly the mood in the public here is a sense of jubilation. There was in the British public, there didn't seem to be as warmth a feeling when it came to Donald Trump. He was seen very much here as a divisive character. So a sense of a return to the America of the past.
Right, and the optimism and the enthusiasm you're talking about on the streets of London has also been witnessed in the European stock markets. The same optimism over the last 48 hours, reacting very sharply to what at that point was a possible Joe Biden victory, but now has become a reality. Mandy, the European stock markets have also been reacting very sharply. Give us a sense of why this election has been this closely watched across Europe.
Because really America is still the powerhouse. The superpower that will really lead the economic forefront. What markets love the most is certainty. They hate uncertainty. Although many pundits and political experts predicted that the markets would actually prefer Donald Trump when it came to his economic policies, there was a sense that it could change moment by moment, that his presidency didn't allow for certainty. So that's why Biden's presidency gives that market a sense of stability, of lack of insecurity, and that's why we're seeing a bigger boost of a sense of security among those financial markets.
But the uncertainty definitely continues for London, Mandy, with a lot of things still up in the air, given which way UK's trade deal will go. But you've been telling us about the optimism that you're seeing on the streets, the enthusiasm. Tell us more about why London sees Joe Biden as a better pick for the American presidency as compared to Donald Trump.
Well, it's an interesting reaction if you put it in that context, because very much Biden has come out strongly against the British government's behavior toward their negotiation strategies with the EU. They have threatened the safety of the Good Friday Agreement, which allows for peace in Ireland. The Northern Irish conflict, long forgotten many years' minds, but that dominated the 1980s. It only really ended in the late 90s with the Northern Ireland peace agreement, the Good Friday Agreement. Biden has Irish roots. He made it very clear that when he was campaigning,
Right, and we will keep closely monitoring the latest coming in from across the world. Of course, this has been an election which has been watched with bated breath, not just in the United States, but across the world. A result which has far-reaching implications. To those of you just joining us, this is a historic day for the United States of America. Joe Biden has been declared the winner by the Associated Press. The president-elect has already issued a statement on Twitter where he has talked about how he will be a leader for all Americans, something that he has stressed on time and again during his campaign as well. We're taking a very short breather at this point. This remains our top focus. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thanks very much for staying on with us here on WION World is One. I'm Molly Gambhir. If you've been away from your TV screens for more than an hour, a lot has changed. Joe Biden has now been declared the winner by the Associated Press. AP has handed Pennsylvania to Joe Biden. That's 20 electoral college votes going to Joe Biden, making him sail beyond the 270 magic number. And in the latest coming in, the Associated Press also giving Nevada to Joe Biden, and that has taken his total to 290 electoral college votes. It's been a close contest, to say the least, in all of these battleground states over the last 3 days. It's been a nail-biter. The election that was on a knife edge now has some clarity coming in for Americans who've been waiting with bated breath. A lot of anticipation in the air because a lot of Americans believe this to be a new chapter in their lives. with the Biden-Harris administration set to take over as per the Associated Press, which has now declared Joe Biden to be the winner of this U.S. presidential race. We have reactions coming in from Joe Biden, who's already released a statement on Twitter. He has changed his description on his Twitter page as well, calling himself the president-elect of the United States. Kamala Harris also declaring herself to be the vice president-elect of the United States of America. This is the moment that we've been waiting for. The counting has gone on for 4 days beyond Election Day. That on your screen is the Twitter page of Kamala Harris, who is set to take over as the next vice president of the United States of America, the first woman president to take over as vice president, the first Indian origin vice president of the United States. Joe Biden's Twitter page, the background, keep the faith, and his description saying President-elect, United States of America. Joe Biden has also issued a tweet just a few minutes back where he's promised to be the leader for all Americans. That has been the common thread running through his statements and reactions all the way up to this moment. Remember, throughout the counting process, while on one hand we had Donald Trump asking for the counting to be stopped, talking about legal challenges, talking about his attempts to put the counting process on hold, alleging voter fraud, alleging irregularities. On the other hand, we had Joe Biden talking about how every vote should be counted, and that's exactly what's happened. And now the clear picture that's emerged, as per the Associated Press, 290 electoral college votes being grabbed by Joe Biden, 270 being the magic number. Pennsylvania and Nevada in the latest turn of events going to Joe Biden. These are crucial battleground states. A lot hinged on these contests. Georgia, Pennsylvania, Nevada, North Carolina. These have been states that we have been closely monitoring over the last few hours. And we have Kamala Harris, the vice president-elect, issuing a statement. Let's take a listen in.
We did it, Joe. You're going to be the next president of the United States. We did it, Joe. You're going to be the next president of the United States. We did it, Joe. You're going to be the next president of the United States. We did it, Joe. You're going to be the next president of the United States.
That on your screen was Kamala Harris, the vice president-elect of the United States of America, on the phone with the president-elect of the United States, Joe Biden, congratulating him, saying, "We did it, Joe." This is the moment that the Americans have been waiting for. They've been waiting for this cloud of uncertainty to pass by. The numbers giving the White House to Joe Biden, as per the Associated Press. If you're just joining us, 290 electoral college votes for Joe Biden. This is just a glimpse of the celebrations on the ground in the United States. Let's get in a quick reaction from Sarah Walton joining us from New York. Sarah, what's the mood looking like in New York? This is a historic day for the United States. What a campaign this has been. What an election this has been. An election on a knife edge, a nail biter. But now there is clarity coming in for Americans. 290 electoral college votes for Joe Biden, as per the Associated Press.
Well, I can tell you that as the news networks began to start calling this race for Joe Biden here in New York, there were cheers on the streets, people coming out into the street with pots and pans where they were making loads of noise and cheering, and there were people in tears. But you have to remember that this is New York. This is a strongly Democrat-leaning part of the United States, and perhaps not a surprise that the news that Joe Biden has now been projected to be the president-elect of the United States is incredibly welcomed here. But of course, this is a very divided country, and while we've had statements from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris that we heard just a few moments ago, at the same moment that the announcement was being made, we also had a statement from from Donald Trump. And we have heard in the days leading up to this announcement that the president would not concede. That was coming from sources within the White House. And at that moment that Joe Biden was announced as president-elect by the news networks, we got a statement from his campaign saying this election is far from over and that beginning Monday, the campaign will start prosecuting our case in court. And in fact, at that moment, there was also a press statement being given by Rudy Giuliani, who is the president's personal lawyer, in Pennsylvania, where the Trump campaign has claimed that there are illegal ballots being counted. He gave a press conference, again saying that they intend to push forward with a legal challenge there. But of course, what we've yet to hear from the legal challenges being made by the Trump campaign is any solid evidence. There's a lot of rhetoric, but so far no clear evidence being put forward that backs up their claims of irregularities in the voting process. We are yet to see what happens as those cases go forward, although we know that at least 2 legal challenges have now been thrown out, but it may not be over yet.
Absolutely. We will talk about the legal challenges in just a short bit. There are these reactions that have been coming in on Twitter that we are also going to be playing out for you in just a short bit. All right, celebrations and jubilation in the air as Americans rejoice the mandate that's been handed over to Joe Biden. 290 electoral college votes as per the latest coming in from the Associated Press. Pennsylvania and Nevada being grabbed by Joe Biden. Those are 2 crucial battleground states where a lot hinged as far as the outcome of this race is concerned. Celebrations erupting across the United States of America. This has been a divisive election, a polarized campaign. For now, there is hope in the air. There is anticipation that this would open a new chapter for the United States. The Joe Biden-Kamala Harris combination, we've been talking about. For more perspectives on that, we have joining us live on the broadcast from Washington, D.C., Richard Rosso, U.S.-India policy expert and senior advisor. Before we go to him, let's take a listen into these reactions coming in. All right, we'll continue to get you a better sense of what things are looking like on the ground. Richard Rosso, India policy expert, is now joining us live on the broadcast. Hi, Richard. What, according to you, would the Kamala Harris-Joe Biden combination mean for the United States-India partnership, Kamala Harris becoming the first Indian origin vice president of the United States? All right, we'll just try and reconnect that line with Richard, but we've been getting you these reactions coming in from on the ground in the United States, celebrations erupting. Joe Biden, as per the Associated Press, has sailed way beyond the magic number of 270. 290 is where his tally stands at the moment. As per the AP, he's been handed over Pennsylvania and Nevada. Those are 20 electoral college votes and 6 in Nevada. So 26 going to him, ultimately taking his tally to 290. All right, before we go to Richard, we also have Susan Tehrani joining us live on the broadcast from New York. Hi, Susan. When we spoke just a few hours ago, there was a cloud of uncertainty which continues to loom large over the United States of America. Some clarity finally emerging. Joe Biden being declared the winner by the Associated Press. Give us a sense of the mood on the ground. We see people clapping away right behind you as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the images really speak louder than anything that I would say here in New York City. while this is a blue state, this is a Democrat state, that definitely the majority in the Electoral College voted for Joe Biden. But we don't remember really living here. I personally don't remember living here any other time when a president was elected that we'd see sort of this kind of celebration with the cars and people out in the street and really, jubilant and vibrant and hopeful regarding what's to come. It's yet to be seen, how this country will manage to come together. Just to put things into perspective, 70+ million Americans did vote for Donald Trump. That's a pretty big chunk of the United States. We'll see how Joe Biden, his challenges, his opportunities to try to bring the country together and to really prove, not just in rhetoric, that he is the president for all Americans. I'm going to leave you with some of these images for a second, and then we can continue picking up, because I don't think you'll be able to hear me very well.
Yes, those celebrations clearly drowning out the point that Susan was trying to make. That, of course, is a sense of where things stand at the moment in New York. Celebrations, a round of applause coming in from the people on the ground. Susan, yes, Susan, we have gotten the sense of celebrations coming in from New York, and we're going to come back to you in just a short bit. Also joining us on the broadcast is Richard Rousseau, U.S.-India policy expert and senior advisor. Richard, this is an election which now takes a lot of equations forward. Speaking specifically about the India-US partnership, your sense of what the immediate stumbling blocks would be and what the Joe Biden administration means for the India policy ties, India-US ties?
Well, luckily, the relationship has been relatively positive across Republicans and Democrats. I think if you look at the last 4 years, despite a lot of negatives in the ledger, the pressure on H-1B visas, the trade fight that's erupted between our two governments, overall, the positives on defense cooperation, counterterrorism cooperation, things like that, have been strong enough where you've actually had a pretty good rapport between the U.S. president and Indian prime minister. And a lot of U.S. cabinet officials kind of followed that lead and managed to build on top of a lot of the good work that had been done by previous U.S. presidents. So generally, I expect cooperation in areas like defense, on counterterrorism, would continue. The areas that I think you're going to see some change, I think the climate change cooperation, which has actually been relatively strong between Obama and Prime Minister Modi, I think will be renewed. And that's definitely a good thing, not only for our relationship, but for the world at large. Also, I think you're going to see a little bit less pressure on some of these trade issues. We both certainly have major deficits, and there's going to be some pressures there. But I think this trade fight that we've seen erupt will be dialed down a couple of notches. On the more harmful side, I think, is you are likely to see a U.S. administration that's more likely to call India out on some of these divisive social issues that have been released by the Indian government and state governments, particularly those that really kind of pressure on the Hindu-Muslim divide. So I don't think that's going to be so bad that it's going to cause a rupture in relations. But, that's an area that's been relatively off the table in recent years, and I think it'll be back on. So definitely some good and bads I see in the near term.
All right, stay with me, Richard. I'll just come back to you. Also with us has been Sarah Walton from New York. Sarah, we just gotten a word from Susan Tehrani, who's been getting us a sense of the celebrations in the air. Now, putting that aside for a minute, let's talk about where things stand. The Associated Press has declared Joe Biden to be the president-elect, but we also have those legal challenges that the Trump campaign has been talking about. Where do things stand at the moment? Do we see the uncertainty continuing even beyond this point?
I mean, potentially, yes. We saw a statement from the Trump campaign just a short while ago saying that as of Monday, they will push forward with their legal challenges to the result and the count in multiple states. What we know of those legal challenges is that so far, no solid evidence has been put forward of any of the claims that illegitimate votes are being counted, or that there was mishandling of the counting process. We saw Rudy Giuliani, the president's personal lawyer, giving a press conference in Pennsylvania a short while ago, saying that election observers, count observers, had not been allowed close enough to where the count was happening, and that would suggest, says Rudy Giuliani, that there was a mishandling of that count, but so far no solid evidence of that. We know at least 2 legal challenges have been thrown out by judges in the country on that basis. Where there is also some uncertainty, though, is that some of the results in the counts have been very, very close. If you look at places like Pennsylvania, Georgia and Wisconsin, the tally there is within the margin that the candidates could ask for a recount, and that is perhaps more than legal challenges where we may see the process held up with recounts held. Although it's not clear yet if any of those recounts, and we've seen recounts in the past perhaps change the total tally by several hundred. At the moment, the margins in those counts totaling in the thousands. So it's not clear yet even if a recount has the ability to change the situation as it stands.
All right, but that legal challenge and the Trump campaign taking it to the courts remains a real possibility still, is what Sarah Walton is telling us. Thanks very much, Sarah, for joining us with those updates. Also with us has been Susan Teherani, getting us the very latest from New York as well. Susan, as Sarah was just telling us, there is that legal battle that the Republican camp has been preparing for, talking about not once, every time they got a chance to do so. The last tweet put out by Donald Trump says, "I have won by a lot." That's all that the tweet says. Do we see the Trump campaign taking forward the legal battle?
They will. They're going to push through as hard as they can on this issue, and we won't see Donald Trump conceding to Joe Biden until he's left no stone unturned regarding this issue. And it's not just the Trump campaign. You have Republicans in the Senate as well who, you know, more or less, most of them have stayed quiet. But you also have allies in the Senate that have come out, like Ted Cruz, who say that, you know, we do want a recount. And there is going to be a recount in some of these states because the margins are so low, and that's just how it's going to be. It's not specific to this election. When the margins are so low between the counts, then you just automatically get a recount. In other states, you don't get an automatic recount. But the issue right now is we don't know if President Trump has a case. We don't know if President Trump has a case or not. He hasn't provided any evidence on whether he can really go to these courts and these courts will accept it or not. That's the big question, let alone go all the way to the Supreme Court. So that's one of the main challenges.
All right. So it's so interesting that we have people cheering on the streets. We have loud trumpets being blown, passing by, while you're telling us that Joe Biden has been declared the president-elect. On the other hand, we have Donald Trump, who's gearing up for that legal challenge. So things remain as interesting as they were even 24 hours ago. Stay with me, Susan. Let's also get a better sense from Stephen Golub, who's been getting us his perspectives. Stephen, recounts have, over the last 2 decades, shown to not bring about a change as far as the winner is concerned. Donald Trump's team is gearing up for a legal challenge, wants to take it forward in the courts. Would you like to weigh in on where this looks headed as far as Trump's consistent promise of taking this battle to the courts is concerned?
Yeah, thanks. The bottom line is that he's very likely to lose. I might add that in addition to opinionating on international affairs and U.S. politics, I am a lawyer, and I have posted one analysis and will be posting later today or tomorrow at the latest another analysis of some of these legal issues at my blog, apromisedland.org. Sorry to plug it in that way, but I think for those of you viewers or others who might be interested, I do go into some more depth. There is a narrow window. There are narrow windows by which Donald Trump could still succeed in challenging this. Over the past couple of weeks, 4 conservative Supreme Court justices, this is before the 5th conservative one, the newly appointed Justice Barrett joined, have voiced an interpretation of the U.S. Constitution that could be very favorable to Donald Trump in the case, in the instance of an election dispute. That aside, and even one of our leading constitutional lawyers, Lawrence Tribe from Harvard Law School, opinionated on this through a column in the Boston Globe recently about how dangerous these opinions could be. I don't think it's going to come to that because just the overwhelming political and media momentum in the U.S. is against Trump being able to challenge this, and partly because Biden has triumphed. It's not just one state that makes the difference. By the time this is over, there'll be 3 or 4 states that'll have made the difference in his winning. But there's that distant possibility out there. And what Trump may also do in the meantime is continue to press his case politically and in a very demagogic kind of way and legally to try to persevere and to try to win. And this could lead to civil unrest. Some of his supporters are armed and things could get nasty in those respects. I don't think it's going to come to violence, but there may be good days and bad days ahead before this is finally nailed down. It's important to understand that even though the Associated Press call on the election is considered authoritative and very well respected, it's not official by any means. We go through a process with our electoral college whereby it won't be known for sure who the next president is. It won't absolutely be confirmed until Congress convenes and votes on January 6th. Assuming that legal disputes don't get in the way of that. So I'm very optimistic that Biden's going to be the next president, but Trump does have some legal recourse that he's going to try to pursue, almost certainly unsuccessfully, but he's going to try to drive through that very, very narrow road to in effect steal the election through legal means. I don't think he'll succeed, though.
All right, Susan, if I can get you in on that. As Stephen Golub also said, evidence is what matters in the court. How exactly does the Trump campaign plan to go about this? The figures definitely don't support them as far as the statistics of vote fraud in America are concerned. Absolutely not in favor of the argument that they have. They have already gotten that ruling from Texas, Georgia, just 48 hours ago. That judge had thrown out that petition from the Trump campaign. So do we not expect them to actually mellow down this legal aspect that they've been talking about? Or do we expect them to further intensify that legal challenge?
Yeah, no, Donald, I don't think the Trump campaign is going to back down, and they're definitely not going to leave without a fight. However, as we know, we don't have any concrete evidence. And if there is concrete evidence, by the way, regarding maybe mistakes, not even quote-unquote fraud, maybe mistakes in the counting because this was a coronavirus election, because there was an overwhelming amount of mail-in ballots, even if there has been discrepancies, the American people are open to learn about that and understand it and see where the counting may have gone wrong. But the issue is there needs to be a thread to really sew all of these issues together. And for now, we've only heard speeches and declarations from Trump and his allies on the fact that there has been quote-unquote widespread fraud. Another issue is that many believe, even Trump supporters believe, that the president would be in a better position if he actually, when we do know for 100% as a fact that Joe Biden is the next president, what his supporters are saying, that he would actually become a more favorable public figure if he conceded gracefully, because he's done a lot for the country, even during this election, than perhaps his predecessors have. Let's not forget, this was not a blue wave by any means. This was a divided America that went to the polls despite the fact that one side had the backing of super PACs, the media, big corporations, and one side really wasn't even able to raise funds for their campaign because public opinion and polls were so against him, and that being Donald Trump. So, but despite that, we really have a majority red when it comes to the U.S. Senate. The Republicans picked up a lot of seats in Congress. They're expected to pick up more, and that's where the law of the land is made. So in terms of the Republican Party, they're in a pretty solid place right now, considering a Trump defeat. Now, this is where it becomes fishy whether or not this fight is going to be about voter fraud or is it going to be about Donald Trump himself and his legacy. And that's where the slippery slope is, I think.
All right, stay with me, Susan. I'll just come back to you. A quick reaction coming in from the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Just moments ago, congratulating Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on Twitter with that message. I'm quoting now. The US is our most important ally. Look forward to working closely on shared priorities like climate change, trade and security. Congratulations to Joe Biden on his election as the President of the United States and to Kamala Harris on her historic achievement. Remember, Donald Trump and Johnson had a very warm relationship. The UK-US ties have been the bedrock of this Western alliance. So it remains to be seen what a Joe Biden-Boris Johnson partnership will look like. Which way will things go as far as the UK-US equation is concerned? We will have to wait and watch. But for now, these are the latest images that we're getting to you from Times Square in New York. Banners, loud chants, slogans, celebrations, rounds of applause, fireworks. We've seen it all over the last 1 hour. Ever since the Associated Press declared Joe Biden as the winner of this crucial presidential race. It was a very neck-and-neck contest. Let's tell you, over the last 48 hours, a lot has changed. The Associated Press handing Pennsylvania and Nevada to Joe Biden. Let's just take a listen in for a moment to these reactions and the celebrations coming in from Times Square. All right, so from that anticipation to that celebration in the air, we've been talking about where things stand as far as the numbers are concerned. 290 is what the latest tally looks like for Joe Biden, with Pennsylvania and Nevada having gone to him.
My name is Amaya Handal, and my from Kuwait. And my son Badr, it's American boy. I'm very happy today. I think it's better. Amani Al-Handal. Amani Al-Handal.
All right, so let's just get you a quick sense of what the numbers are looking like. 290 is the latest tally for Joe Biden, which has given him that comfortable victory, taking him way beyond the 270 magic number. That's where things stand. If you're just joining us, the Associated Press has handed Pennsylvania and Nevada, the crucial battleground states, to Joe Biden. With that, 20 and 6 electoral college votes, 26 in all, going to Joe Biden, which has made this contest from being an absolute nail-biter to a victory for Joe Biden. The Associated Press declaring him as the president-elect. We've got you the reaction coming in from his running mate, Kamala Harris, who is now the vice president-elect as well, who spoke to him over the phone just a few moments ago, congratulating him, saying, "We did it, Joe." What a day it is for the United States of America, and what a day it is for the India-US partnership as well, with Kamala Harris set to become the first Indian origin vice president of the United States, Joe Biden, president-elect. Kamala Harris also the first woman vice president of the United States. So that in itself tells you what a crucial chapter this has opened for the United States. This has been a presidential race which has seen a polarized campaign, to say the least. divisive United States of America. Speaking about that, let's get in a quick reaction from Susan Tehrani as well, who's been getting us the very latest from on ground in New York. Susan, if you can just take a step back and look at the larger picture here. We have an America which stands divided, given the polarized campaign, given the divisions which have once again come to the fore. The possibility of civil unrest is unfortunately a very real one, given that Joe Biden has now been declared as the president-elect. What is the security preparedness looking like? Are the protests still continuing in some parts of the United States?
Absolutely. Security measures are on high alert. And here in New York, the NYPD has been working on overdrive to make sure that these protests in the past few days don't turn violent. More or less, they were peaceful. There were some incidents and arrests. And across America as well, I mean, you really saw two camps. You saw the Trump supporters going to polling stations in Detroit, Michigan, for example, and saying stop the count. And on the other hand, you saw Biden supporters going out in the street and saying continue counting the votes. But, you know, what's interesting is this country, you're right, is extremely divided right now. And Joe Biden's main challenge will have to be whether or not he's able to move past the rhetoric of being the president of all Americans and really putting that in action. And one of those things would have to be working with his old friend, so to say, Mitch McConnell in the Senate, to try to bring America together with a lot of their policies. But what's very fascinating is these are the streets of New York right now. If you were here 4 years ago and Hillary Clinton was expected to win, and she didn't, and the presidency went to Donald Trump, it was a shanty town. People were crying. They were hoping for celebrations, and they didn't get it. So one might argue at the end of the day, despite the divisions, this was a win for American democracy. The fact that this many people showed up to go out and vote and put their ballots out, whether by mail or in person, really demonstrates how important this election was for them, and how the next president will really have to bring this country together if you want to prevent any more unrest, protests, and really the questioning of moral values at the end of the day. So it's a tough job. It's a win for now, perhaps, for Joe Biden, but his road ahead is going to be very, very long.
All right, and that reassurance has already come in from Joe Biden, where he says that he will be a leader for all Americans, and that is the need of the hour, as Susan Tehrani is also telling us. Stay with me, Susan. Also getting a quick reaction from Richard, who's been with us, for a better sense of what this means for American partnerships with countries across the world, specifically with India. We've seen the Trump-Modi partnership, the bonhomie, the chemistry between the two leaders, which made headlines not just in India or the US, but across the world. That friendship has been spoken of. The Joe Biden-Narendra Modi equation, what do you think that's going to look like?
Well, I think a lot of it's going to be defined by the senior people that Biden appoints in his administration. The president only has a certain amount of time to engage in foreign relations, and typically it involves very high point things rather than day-to-day engagement. When you find out who the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, even the Treasury Secretary, but also getting faster and more appointments. For 4 years, we haven't had a confirmed Assistant Secretary of State to manage the relationship. So we've been without the day-to-day point person for the relationship. Certainly, we've got some very good staff at the White House and other places. But so I think, the real determinants about what day-to-day looks like is going to be more by who the vice president appoints to his cabinet and to the positions just below the cabinet. And I tell you, for an insider like Vice President Biden, there are a lot of folks that are in line to try to secure those positions. So that's the great parlor game in Washington right now with the announcement of the victor, is who's going to be getting those kind of key roles in the administration. Those are the folks that are going to define what the relationship really looks like, even more in some ways than the president does.
All right, Richard. A very interesting point that you make here of what the India-US friendship will look like under Joe Biden. Stay with me. Also speaking about how countries across the world are viewing this election result, we have already gotten reactions from the UK Prime Minister, from the Canadian Prime Minister. We will get to them just one by one. First, to the latest coming in from Barack Obama, who has congratulated Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. It's a comprehensive statement that's been issued by the former president of the United States, who has campaigned very aggressively for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I'm quoting now from that statement: "I could not be prouder to congratulate our next president, Joe Biden, and our next First Lady, Jill Biden. I also could not be prouder to congratulate Kamala Harris for Kamala's groundbreaking election as our next vice president." He goes on to say, "In this election, under circumstances never experienced, Americans turned out in numbers never seen, and once every vote is counted, President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris will have won a historic and decisive victory. We are fortunate that Joe's got what it takes to be president and already carries himself that way, because when he walks into the White House in January, he will face a series of extraordinary challenges no incoming president ever has. A raging pandemic, an unequal economy and justice system, a democracy at risk, and a climate in peril." That's the comprehensive statement issued by Barack Obama. We also have reactions now coming in, as we said, from across the world, starting first with how UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has reacted. That's the statement coming in through that tweet issued by Boris Johnson. "Congratulations to Joe Biden on his election as President of the United States, and to Kamala Harris on her historic achievement. The US is our most important ally, and I look forward to working closely together on our shared priorities, from climate change to trade and security." Those are the main areas that he's talked about. Like we said, the UK-US partnership will change from here onwards in many ways, and we will continue to talk about that. We also have Bernie Sanders issuing a statement coming up on your screen. "I want to congratulate all those who have worked so hard to make this historic day possible. Now, through our continued grassroots organizing, let us create a government that works for all and not the few. Let us create a nation built on justice, not greed and bigotry." So the reason why he's chosen to capitalize the word all is a very significant one. Joe Biden has promised that he will be a leader for all Americans, as opposed to Donald Trump. And that's something that we've been talking about. Being a leader for all Americans and putting aside those divisions that have come to the fore during this election is going to be a very crucial challenge up ahead for Joe Biden. Bill Clinton has also issued a statement on Twitter just minutes ago, putting that on your screen. "America has spoken and democracy has won. Now we have a president-elect and vice president-elect who will serve all of us and bring us all together. Congratulations to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on your momentous victory." Nancy Pelosi also issuing this tweet: "We kept the republic. Congratulations to Joe Biden on his victory for the soul of our country. Congratulations to Kamala Harris for making history. It is a time to heal and a time to grow together." Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, also congratulating Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, saying, "Our two countries are close friends, partners and allies. We share a relationship that is unique on the world stage. I am really looking forward to working together and building on all that with you both." These are the reactions that have come in over the last few minutes, cutting across the world. Leaders congratulating Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Susan Tehrani has been with us, getting us the very latest from New York. We also have been playing out for you the celebrations coming in from Times Square. Susan, the one question on everyone's minds is that even though the numbers are in favor of Joe Biden at this point, to what extent do we see the legal tussle changing that at all?
The legal battle by Donald Trump, it's going to continue. I mean, this is who Donald Trump is. And, you know, interestingly enough, this is New York. This is where he has a home. This is where multiple Trump towers are. So, you know, he's also looking at one of his home states, basically, apart from Florida, that's celebrating his now what we know as defeat. But Donald Trump being Donald Trump, he believes that he owes it to his supporters, he owes it to himself and his campaign, and to a large part, people who voted for him and America, that he fights until the very end to make sure that there is no stones left unturned. Now, whether or not he'll get anywhere by doing that is one question, but what that also raises is the possibility of his some of his supporters that take his words literally and out of context to come out and foment violence and take to the streets and try to challenge the status quo. So it's a very tricky situation that the Trump campaign is right now. But you know, you go on social media and you see his supporters defending him and backing him up, and unfortunately undermining one of the most democratic pillars of our country, which is the right to vote and you know, accurate voting. And they're saying that there was probably fraud. That's why that their president lost. It's a challenging place to be in, but it's also important to note that when it comes to Joe Biden and all the congratulatory remarks coming from U.S. officials, it seems like the bar is very high for him, the way that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton are congratulating him, in a way that once he's elected, there's sort of going to be this sweep of a brush and everything is going to be perfect and America is going to be united once again, and we're all going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. That's probably not going to be the case. That would be my guess, considering the fact that many of his Democratic allies in Congress recently, a few of them had a meltdown on a call with Nancy Pelosi, saying that the reason we're losing Congress and we're losing support of the American people is because we keep talking about defunding the police and some of these extreme leftist policies. So he has to really go back to his own party as well and try to tone things down and maybe bring them a little more to the center, if that's even possible at this point, so they actually have a somewhat of a control over Washington and then move on to sort of bring this unity that they speak of.
Right. Stay with me, Susan. We have some developments coming in from what's going on within the Trump camp. Well, it's nothing to do with the electoral result. Let's tell you that Donald Trump is at the moment golfing at the golf club in Virginia. These are the latest images of Donald Trump after his defeat to Joe Biden. Trump's Twitter has also been silent. The last tweet, a glaring one, saying 2 hours ago, where he's announced his victory, saying that I have won by a lot. That's all that the tweet says in his trademark capitalized letters. On the other hand, we have these images coming in of Donald Trump golfing in the golf club in Virginia. We have Stephen Golub also, who's been getting us his perspectives on what we are unfolding or we're seeing unfolding in the United States of America. Stephen, you know, we have Donald Trump who has time and again questioned the voting process, the democratic process. Now that the result is out, we don't see a statement from his team as of now. We will perhaps see them react as sharply as they have over the last few hours as well. But give us a better sense of what this tells us about a leader who has been questioning the very process that got him to power. The mayor in Philadelphia just a few hours ago had asked Donald Trump to put his big boy pants on, quote unquote, and concede defeat. But given how we've seen Donald Trump reacting all this while, we do not really see that happening.
No, I like that comment, put his big boy pants on. Just briefly, just a personal reflection. Over the course of this broadcast, I feel like the weight of the world has been lifted off my shoulders, not my personal shoulders, but the country's shoulders. 4 years ago, there was really, for many of this traumatic event of the surprise shock of Hillary Clinton losing to Donald Trump. And it wasn't just the loss itself, it's the way Donald Trump acted in in the ensuing years. I gave a talk in India shortly after the election to a policy institute there, and then an interview to WION, in which I was cautiously, not optimistic, but at least cautiously neutral about the possibility that Donald Trump would grow into the job, despite his previous track record in the campaign and earlier in his career. He didn't grow into the job at all. In fact, he continued in many ways to act like someone who was a little boy, a petulant 2-year-old. And I think a lot of people around the country are not just celebrating, but breathing easier. As for a broader perspective, it says a lot about Trump, but it's not shocking to many of us that he's refusing to concede in the ways that Republican losers Mitt Romney and John Kaine honorably did when they lost previously, and Democrats have. We have a tradition of losing candidates conceding graciously and in respecting our democratic institutions and our democracy. That's not Donald Trump. Going forward, I think he's going to be doing some calculations purely in terms of what's in his own self-interest. Should he moderate his tone somewhat, even though he won't concede? I'm almost absolutely sure about that. Moderate his tone somewhat, not rabble-rouse, or will he continue to try to build and maintain the Trump brand of saying the election was absolutely stolen from me, I deserve to be in the White House for the next 4 years, and how far he'll push that in terms of rabble-rousing his supporters to do demonstrations or engage in other civil unrest and even potentially be violent. That's a big question mark. I'm not terribly optimistic that he'll back away from that stance, because Trump is looking beyond the election to perhaps, even if he loses, even if he realizes in his head that he's going to have to leave the White House, to start perhaps Trump TV as a marketing and money-making venue for him, to deal with at least $400 million of debt that's piling up, to deal with the possibility of being prosecuted and going to jail, whether on federal or New York State or New York City charges for potentially criminal activities he engaged in, to his tax returns being released now that he's no longer in the White House. He's looking at some very negative scenarios, and maintaining his brand and political support and a media presence may be fueled, may be supported by continuing to take a hard line now. I kind of hope I'm wrong about that, but everything we've seen about Donald Trump for the past 4 years is not encouraging about the way he's going to act going forward.
Right, you talk about how the weight of the weight on the people of America, their shoulders, has been lifted through this result. It's a very significant statement that you make here, given the divisions that we've seen come to the fore throughout this election. Stephen Golub, how concerned are you about the polarization on the ground, the possibility of a civil unrest, the protests that have continued, and the ugly possibility of things spiraling out of control over the next few hours, if things do turn that ugly?
Over the next few hours, I don't know, but I'm very concerned about over the next few weeks and months that Trump will encourage people to, he won't actually say, go out with your automatic weaponry, which a lot of Americans have because that's our gun culture here, and do some violence. No, he won't be as explicit as that, but he's hinted at all sorts of things. Lock her up for Hillary Clinton when there were no charges to do so. And in terms of when I said the weight off of our shoulders, I think it's important to emphasize that, yes, many Americans, as I was saying, we do feel a weight lifted over our shoulders, a greater lightness going forward. But that's, just a little bit more than half the country. And there are Trump supporters who are feeling depressed. They're feeling cheated. They're feeling angry right now. Donald Trump may feed into that. They're living in a completely different media universe. You in India covering the U.S. election are doing a better job, and I have tremendous respect for WION regardless, but you're doing a good job of showing what's going on here. Lots of Americans aren't getting such good coverage. They're watching Fox News, which in some ways has covered the election okay, its news division has, but more people watch Fox's opinion people who may still be ranting and raving about the election maybe being stolen. A lot of them get their news just from Trump's tweets, and we know how biased those are, or from social media platforms, or from radio hosts who are absolutely pro-Trump. So a lot of those people may be agitated by Trump or by those other platforms and outlets. And even though I don't think over the next few hours we'll see bad things happening, it's possible that over the next few days, weeks, whatever, depending on how Trump handles this, there could be civil unrest and potentially violence. There will be good days and bad days going forward from now until Biden is most likely inaugurated.
All right, so good days and bad days ahead is what Stephen Golub is saying. For now, it's a historic day. The United States of America will have the first woman vice president in Kamala Harris, who is now the vice president-elect. She will also be the first Indian origin vice president of America. And that says a lot about which way the India-US partnership will go. We have been talking to our panel of experts about the ramifications on the India-US equation, also on the partnership between US and countries across the world, how there will be a possible reset of the India-China ties. That's another takeaway coming in from the comments coming in from our experts at this point. These are latest live images that we are getting to you from Washington, D.C. We've been also getting you a flavor of the celebrations that are taking place at Times Square in New York. While there is a wave of celebrations, there is anticipation in the air, which has now turned to jubilation. A lot still remains under a question mark. How will the Trump campaign respond now? We have that legal challenge that they are gearing up for. Will this become an ugly legal tussle? And how prepared is the Republican camp even to take this forward in the courts, given that they've refused to back up their claims of voter fraud and irregularities with any evidence so far? Over the last 24 hours as well, Donald Trump has spoken about voter fraud in unprecedented developments. We saw several TV news networks blacking out the president's address, cutting away while he was still in the middle of that address, choosing to not air his address, saying that he was spreading misinformation. And that's been one crucial factor where his campaign has hinged. His tweets, his statements surrounding around voter fraud and irregularity is something that they have not been able to substantiate with evidence. Those claims have been made time and again. But at the same time, we're seeing the numbers giving out that decisive victory to Joe Biden. What a tremendous feat this has been for the Biden campaign. 290 electoral college votes, Nevada and Pennsylvania going towards the Joe Biden path, clearing his way for winning this race to the White House. A lot has changed over the last 2 hours from that wave of uncertainty to the wave of jubilations that we are seeing in Washington, D.C. and several parts of the United States of America. Susan, we've been talking about the factors that seem to have worked in the favor of Joe Biden. And the COVID-19 crisis has been one. But speaking about the misinformation that the Trump campaign also has focused on, the people in America seem to believe that Joe Biden will be the leader who will safeguard their interests, not just when it comes to their health, but also lead the way for all Americans. And that's been something that he has emphasized on through almost all of his statements in the run-up to this day.
That's right, he has. That's what he's been trying to say. He says that I'm the leader for all Americans, and that's the platform of sort of compassion that he ran on all through his election. He did focus on COVID. As we always say, his campaign was really COVID-centric. And now he comes into office at a time when there is probably going to be a vaccine before the end of the year, so that'll hopefully help the American people deal with this crisis that they've never seen before on the one hand, and also on the other hand sort of pin Joe Biden as the person that cured America from COVID, at least with a vaccine to some extent. On the other hand, you have the issue of healthcare. Healthcare is very important to Americans right now, not just because of COVID, but because of the fact that a lot of Americans are out of job right now. And what Obamacare did, and what Joe Biden really fights for Obamacare, sort of this healthcare for all, really paved the way for a lot of people to get health care when they didn't have the opportunity to do so. And whether Donald Trump meant it or not, he sort of implied that he wants to get rid of Obamacare, and without people not knowing really what that entailed, and he kept flipping back and forth on that. I think that was also an issue that Americans were concerned about, considering the fact that, you know, that's that's for lower income Americans for the most part, and because of COVID, you know, our economy hasn't been doing so well, so healthcare, you know, becomes a very central role in that sense as well. But we'll see. Just to follow up on what we were discussing before, Trumpism is not going to be dead after Donald Trump. He has really invigorated this kind of populist conservative movement that will live on well beyond him among his supporters. And whether Donald Trump decides to be at the forefront sort of as a leader, which he does like to be in the spotlight all the time, so we'll see whether he does that or not. But this is a movement that's here to stay, and that'll be the main challenge for someone like Joe Biden, to really appeal to that part of America, or just not pay attention to it at all, as Barack Obama did. And Barack Obama, as we know, paved the way for someone like Donald Trump. So these are his challenges.
Right, and one clip that's been doing the rounds on social media at this point has been from the presidential debate last time around, where Donald Trump has been accused of alleging there's been rigging in just about everything that he loses. And this, unfortunately, will become reality for this presidential race as well, perhaps, given the way Donald Trump has reacted to Joe Biden taking the lead in the battleground states. We haven't heard from the Trump campaign team so far ever since Joe Biden was declared the winner by the Associated Press. He was handed Pennsylvania and Nevada in that quick turn of events. Not so quick, given that the results have been counted for 4 days now since election day, but quick in the sense that this was an election on a knife edge. It was a very tight race in those battleground states, but in the latest, the Associated Press has given Pennsylvania and Nevada, that's 26 electoral college votes to Joe Biden over the last 2 hours, and that has taken his total tally to 290 electoral college votes, way beyond the magic number of 270. The Associated Press has declared Joe Biden as the winner of this race. It is going to be a Joe Biden White House, as per the Associated Press. With him, Kamala Harris as the vice president, the first woman vice president of America. What a campaign this has been, an extremely polarized one, and unfortunately, we do have the possibility of civil unrest intensifying, a possibility of civil unrest over the next few days and weeks ahead in America. That's something that we have been talking about as well. But for now, giving you a flavor of the celebrations that we are witnessing on ground in Washington, D.C., as people have been turning out in large numbers ever since those numbers gave that decisive victory to Joe Biden. We haven't heard from the Trump campaign team. The last tweet from Donald Trump, who is known to tweet very often, especially during the campaign and the election results, has not tweeted over the last 2 hours. We understand that he was golfing in Virginia just a while ago. We also played out for you images coming in from that golfing club. We don't know what's expected to come out from the Trump campaign over the next few hours. But what we can say is that Joe Biden is now declared as the winner of this race, a very tight one in those crucial battleground states, which also has been a surprise for many electoral observers. A quick reaction from Susan Teherani on how the pollsters, Susan, need to now give this a very close look. They've been deceived all over again. And the predictions that it's a similar story that we saw last time around as well, where the predictions do not hold.
Absolutely. Polling is something that really needs to be reconsidered once again here in the United States. As you mentioned, in 2016, one of their excuses was that we didn't understand the silent Trump voter, because people were scared to say that they were going to vote for Trump because Hillary sort of had this kind of monopoly on the media and everything. Well, guess what? It was the same thing this year. First of all, people did not have they weren't comfortable saying that they vote for Trump, because at this point it wasn't just, you know, you'd be sort of looked at in a certain way. It was the fact that people would attack Trump voters. So that's on the one hand. Historically, we know conservatives don't like to take polls. That's something else, that the polls usually go into these small groups of 300, 400, but the majority of them, when you look really closely at the fine line, it says, for example, +9 Democrats. So it's usually more Democratic centric. And on the other hand, there is an interest issue that comes in play. We journalists have to decide whether or not we're in it for the business, or we're really reporting the facts, or we're reporting what we want to hear. The business aspect of it is when the polls are so off by 10, 15 points, then that means that the other party sort of is at a disadvantage to raise money, to create confidence, to bring in donors, so to say, and to really run a proper campaign. On the other hand, it's the psychological issue that comes for the American people. When you see someone that, no matter what they say, the polls are indicating from the sky above, from heaven above, that there is like a 15% difference. There's a 10% difference. That means one candidate basically has no chance. So let's pay attention to what the winning candidate is saying. I mean, that's the psychological aspect of it. And I know that your guest also mentioned that a lot of people just don't sit and watch the news every day. They get it here and there, and these polls play a very important role. But yes, the polling, the predictions, the pundits, and us journalists, we all have to sort of take a step back to see how we got these margins so wrong once again this time. And this time is not like 2016 where we don't know what's going to happen. What is going to happen is an extremely divided country that won't be able to come together if we continue to predict what we want to predict and not what's really happening on the ground.
Absolutely. Susan Teherani, thanks very much indeed for getting us a better sense of where things stand and those reactions from on ground. With that, we're taking a very short break, but there is uncertainty definitely which has ended for the United States of America, with the Associated Press handing over that victory to Joe Biden, who is set to take over as the next president of the United States. With him, Kamala Harris, the first Indian origin Vice President of America, the first woman Vice President of America. A lot that remains to be discussed, ramifications, of course, of this result, not just for America, but for the entire world. We'll delve deeper into all of those aspects, continuing right here on WION World is One. For now, taking a short breather with me, Molly Gambhir. Thanks for watching.
Screaming outside. Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Black...
Welcome back. Thanks very much for staying on with us here on WION World is One. I'm Molly Gambhir. If you've been away from your TV screens for more than an hour, a lot has changed. Joe Biden has now been declared the winner by the Associated Press. AP has handed Pennsylvania to Joe Biden. That's 20 electoral college votes going to Joe Biden, making him sail beyond the 270 magic number. And in the latest coming in, the Associated Press also giving Nevada to Joe Biden, and that has taken his total to 290 electoral college votes. It's been a close contest, to say the least, in all of these battleground states over the last 3 days. It's been a nail-biter. The election that was on a knife edge now has some clarity coming in for Americans who've been waiting with bated breath. A lot of anticipation in the air because a lot of Americans believe this to be a new chapter in their lives, with the Biden-Harris administration set to take over as per the Associated Press, which has now declared Joe Biden to be the winner of this U.S. presidential race. We have reactions coming in from Joe Biden, who's already released a statement on Twitter. He has changed his description on his Twitter page as well, calling himself the president-elect of the United States. Kamala Harris also declaring herself to be the vice president-elect of the United States of America. This is the moment that we've been waiting for. The counting has gone on for 4 days beyond Election Day. That on your screen is the Twitter page of Kamala Harris, who is set to take over as the next Vice President of the United States of America, the first woman president to take over as Vice President, the first Indian origin Vice President of the United States. Joe Biden's Twitter page, the background, keep the faith, and his description saying President-elect, United States of America. Joe Biden has also issued a tweet just a few minutes back, where he's promised to be the leader for all Americans. That has been the common thread running through his statements and reactions all the way up to this moment. Remember, throughout the counting process, while on one hand we had Donald Trump asking for the counting to be stopped, talking about legal challenges, talking about his attempts to put the counting process on hold, alleging voter fraud, alleging irregularities. On the other hand, we had Joe Biden talking about how every vote should be counted, and that's exactly what's happened. And now the clear picture that's emerged, as per the Associated Press, 290 electoral college votes being grabbed by Joe Biden, 270 being the magic number. Pennsylvania and Nevada in the latest turn of events going to Joe Biden. These are crucial battleground states. A lot hinged on these contests. Georgia, Pennsylvania, Nevada, North Carolina. These have been states that we have been closely monitoring over the last few hours. And we have Kamala Harris, the Vice President-elect, issuing a statement. Let's take a listen in.
We did it, Joe. You're going to be the next president of the United States. We did it, Joe. You're going to be the next president of the United States. We did it, Joe. You're going to be the next president of the United States. We did it, Joe. You're going to be the next president of the United States.
That on your screen was Kamala Harris, the Vice President-elect of the United States of America, on the phone with the President-elect of the United States, Joe Biden, congratulating him, saying, "We did it, Joe." This is the moment that the Americans have been waiting for. They've been waiting for this cloud of uncertainty to pass by. The numbers giving the White House to Joe Biden, as per the Associated Press. If you're just joining us, 290 electoral college votes for Joe Biden. This is just a glimpse of the celebrations on the ground in the United States. Let's get in a quick reaction from Sarah Walton joining us from New York. Sarah, what's the mood looking like in New York? This is a historic day for the United States. What a campaign this has been. What an election this has been. An election on a knife edge, a nail biter. But now there is clarity coming in for Americans. 290 electoral college votes for Joe Biden, as per the Associated Press.
Well, I can tell you that as the news networks began to start calling this race for Joe Biden here in New York, there were cheers on the streets, people coming out into the street with pots and pans where they were making loads of noise and cheering, and there were people in tears. But I mean, you have to remember that this is New York. This is a strongly Democrat-leaning part of the United States, and perhaps not a surprise that the news that Joe Biden has now been projected to be the president-elect of the United States is incredibly welcomed here. But of course, this is a very divided country, and while we've had statements from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris that we heard just a few moments ago, at the same moment that the announcement was being made, we also had a statement from Donald Trump, and we have heard in the days leading up to this announcement that the president would not concede. That was coming from sources within the White House, and at that moment that Joe Biden was announced as president-elect by the news networks, we got a statement from his campaign saying this election is far from over, and that beginning Monday the campaign will start prosecuting our case in court. And in fact, at that moment there was also a press statement being given by Rudy Giuliani, who is the president's personal lawyer in Pennsylvania, where the Trump campaign has claimed that there are illegal ballots being counted. He gave a press conference again saying that they intend to push forward with a legal challenge there. But of course, what we've yet to hear from the legal challenges being made by the Trump campaign is any solid evidence. There's a lot of rhetoric, but so far no clear evidence being put forward that backs up their claims of irregularities in the voting process. We are yet to see what happens as those cases go forward, although we know that at least 2 legal challenges have now been thrown out, but it may not be over yet.
Absolutely. We will talk about the legal challenges in just a short bit. There are these reactions that have been coming in on Twitter that we are also going to be playing out for you in just a short bit. All right, celebrations and jubilation in the air as Americans rejoice the mandate that's been handed over to Joe Biden. 290 electoral college votes as per the latest coming in from the Associated Press. Pennsylvania and Nevada being grabbed by Joe Biden. Those are 2 crucial battleground states where a lot hinged as far as the outcome of this race is concerned. Celebrations erupting across the United States of America. This has been a divisive election, a polarized campaign. For now, there is hope in the air. There is anticipation that this would open a new chapter for the United States. The Joe Biden-Kamala Harris combination, we've been talking about. For more perspectives on that, we have joining us live on the broadcast from Washington, D.C., Richard Rosso, U.S.-India policy expert and senior advisor. Before we go to him, let's take a listen into these reactions coming in. All right, we'll continue to get to you a better sense of what things are looking like on the ground. Richard Rosso, India policy expert, is now joining us live on the broadcast. Hi, Richard. What, according to you, would the Kamala Harris-Joe Biden combination mean for the United States-India partnership, Kamala Harris becoming the first Indian origin vice president of the United States? All right, we'll just try and reconnect that line with Richard, but we've been getting you these reactions coming in from on the ground in the United States, celebrations erupting. Joe Biden, as per the Associated Press, has sailed way beyond the magic number of 270. 290 is where his tally stands at the moment. As per the AP, he's been handed over Pennsylvania and Nevada. Those are 20 electoral college votes and 6 in Nevada. So 26 going to him, ultimately taking his tally to 290. All right, before we go to Richard, we also have Susan Tehrani joining us live on the broadcast from New York. Hi, Susan. When we spoke just a few hours ago, there was a cloud of uncertainty which continues to loom large over the United States of America. Some clarity finally emerging. Joe Biden being declared the winner by the Associated Press. Give us a sense of the mood on the ground. We see people clapping away right behind you as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the images really speak louder than anything that I would say here in New York City. While this is a blue state, this is a Democrat state that definitely the majority in the Electoral College voted for Joe Biden. But we don't remember really living here. I personally don't remember living here any other time when a president was elected that we'd see sort of this kind of celebration with the cars and people out in the street and really jubilant and vibrant and hopeful regarding what's to come. It's yet to be seen, how this country will manage to come together. Just to put things into perspective, 70+ million Americans did vote for Donald Trump. That's a pretty big chunk of the United States. We'll see how Joe Biden, his challenges, his opportunities to try to bring the country together and to really prove, not just in rhetoric, that he is the president for all Americans. I'm going to leave you with some of these images for a second, and then we can continue picking up, because I don't think you'll be able to hear me very well.
Yes, those relations clearly drowning out the point that Susan was trying to make. That, of course, is a sense of where things stand at the moment in New York. Celebrations, a round of applause coming in from the people on the ground. Susan, yes, Susan, we have gotten the sense of celebrations coming in from New York, and we're going to come back to you in just a short bit. Also joining us on the broadcast is Richard Rosso, U.S.-India policy expert and senior advisor. Richard, this is an election which now takes a lot of equations forward. Speaking specifically about the India-US partnership, your sense of what the immediate stumbling blocks would be and what the Joe Biden administration means for the India policy ties, India-US ties.
Well, luckily, the relationship has been relatively positive across Republicans and Democrats. I think if you look at the last 4 years, despite a lot of negatives in the ledger, the pressure on H-1B visas, the trade fight that's erupted between our two governments, overall, the positives on defense cooperation, counterterrorism cooperation, things like that, have been strong enough where you've actually had a pretty good rapport between the U.S. president and Indian prime minister. And a lot of U.S. cabinet officials kind of followed that lead and managed to build on top of a lot of the good work that had been done by previous U.S. presidents. So generally, I expect cooperation in areas like defense, on counterterrorism, would continue. The areas that I think you're going to see some change, I think the climate change cooperation, which has actually been relatively strong between Obama and Prime Minister Modi, I think will be renewed. And that's definitely a good thing, not only for our relationship, but for the world at large. Also, I think you're going to see a little bit less pressure on some of these trade issues. We both certainly have major deficits, and there's going to be some pressures there. But I think this trade fight that we've seen erupt will be dialed down a couple of notches. On the more harmful side, I think, is you are likely to see a U.S. administration that's more likely to call India out on some of these divisive social issues that have been released by the Indian government and state governments, particularly those that really kind of pressure on the Hindu-Muslim divide. So I don't think that's going to be so bad that it's going to cause a rupture in relations. But, that's an area that's been relatively off the table in recent years, and I think it'll be back on. So definitely some good and bads I see in the near term.
All right, stay with me, Richard. I'll just come back to you. Also with us has been Sarah Walton from New York. Sarah, we just gotten a word from Susan Tehrani, who's been getting us a sense of the celebrations in the air. Now, putting that aside,